Hi, I'm Bob Ruggiero, Vice President of Communications for Quilts Incorporated, and this is another one of our series of interviews with winners of the 2022 Festival Judge Show. We're very proud to have Roberta Lagomarsini, I got to put some Italian on that, with us today. She is the winner of the equilter.com Master Award for Contemporary Artistry. That's a $5,000 prize sponsored by equilter.com for her quilt, which you see behind the both of us, Blue Basket. It measures 61 inches by 41 inches. Roberta's from Bishop, California, here in the US. Her design source, it's an original design, but it was inspired by the baskets in the book Scrape the Willow Until It Sings by Deborah Valoma. And she has a quote from Deborah in her artist statement: "Baskets are like stories. If you listen, they will tell you something." So what Roberta says is this quilt was inspired by California and Nevada's Paiute. I'm not sure if I
Hi.
have that.
Hi.
Paiute tribes winnowing baskets. This is a deconstructed version to allow viewing of the weaving. The vibrant colors show the beauty of the rituals involved in creating the baskets, and a hand-painted background fabric suggests the seeds, leaves, and other debris that fall through the basket. The quilting is in a basket weave pattern. So Roberta, thank you for joining us today, and again, congratulations.
Thank you. And I want to thank eQuilter for sponsoring this award. It's much appreciated.
Well, that's great. Well, I guess the first question I have is probably the most obvious. Tell me a little bit about, do you have a background or an interest in Native American culture and history, and kind of what inspired this work?
Well, living in the Owens Valley, and I mean, it's a very remote place. So the closest big city is actually 3 hours away, which is Carson City and Reno. So we have a lot of influences of Native American art and culture where I live and where we travel to for shopping. And I've always been interested in Native American culture. And I was fortunate enough to take a class from Julia Parker, who that book is actually about, and learn basket weaving. I was terrible at it, from her and her daughter, who's also a master basket weaver. So this quilt just evolved and became this basket.
I find it fascinating that this quilt kind of started in something you couldn't do, and you transformed it into something you could do.
Yes, apparently for women, making baskets out of reeds and natural materials, it's a little harder because we don't have finger strength. So we had one gentleman in our class, and his basket came out great because his fingers were stronger. So this is sort of the weave that I got on my actual basket, kind of loose.
Did you find a particular challenge in taking something that's kind of a real world object like a basket, but then putting your own creative spin on it into, this doesn't look like an exact basket, but it's obviously inspired by it?
Well, I think when I started this quilt, it wasn't going to be a basket. I don't know what it was going to be. I wanted to use the fabrics, and it just sort of evolved into this open space with the rectangles overlapping each other, and then adding the little strips for the weaving. So it just evolved into a basket. So it was after I put together the main body of the quilt that I discovered it was a basket. I was really just trying to use the fabrics.
I was going to say there's a wide variety of fabrics in here. Were these fabrics from your stash, or did you go and kind of specifically find certain colors, certain designs?
I think there was a color scheme going on. These are fabrics that I overpainted and maybe overdyed at various stages in my sewing career. And I just wanted to use them because they were beautiful, and I wanted to use them together. And some fabrics didn't make the cut, unfortunately, for them.
Didn't make the cut. I didn't know we were going to have quilting puns in this segment. So
Well, I didn't know that either. So it just sort of evolved into, because I live 3 hours away from anything major, and our town went from 3 quilt stores to 1. So there's not a lot of accessibility to get materials anymore. I tend to just pull things out of my stash and make them work in a pleasing way, which is, its own challenge, although I enjoy that challenge quite a bit.
Well, tell me a little bit about how you first got started quilting and involved in quilting, and maybe more importantly, what's kind of kept you interested in it over the years.
I think as a child, I always did embroidery. I learned how to sew. I used to make my own clothes, and I did a little quilting before I moved over here. And then we moved over here and I was retired, so I had time to quilt. And I got into a local quilting group here, and in the beginning made lots of quilts from patterns, and we had a couple of prolific quilters, and I kept trying to keep up with them and make a lot of quilts, because they would make like 20 quilts a year. And so I got a lot of good practice. But to me, not using a pattern is a better deal. It's more fun. I quilt all my own quilts, which is part of the fun for me. And I've just kept doing it. I was fortunate enough to find Art Quilt Tahoe, and so I've been attending that for the last 10 years, I think. So I'm finally with people who don't think my quilts are weird. I enter my quilts at our local fair, and while I have groupies and I usually win the judge's choice, my quilts are very different from everyone else's. So it's nice to be in a group where they understand what you're doing.
Is there something about this particular work that maybe stands out in your mind from any of the others you've made, either in terms of just, design, or maybe something weird or funny that happened while you were making it?
I think, it's a quilt I started that, like I said, I didn't know what it was going to be. And when it turned out to be this basket, I was very pleased with it. I mean, it spoke to me, and it told me what it needed to be, which a lot of my quilts do, but this one did it more than others, I think. And it was fun because everything but the backgrounds fused together, and I fused the whole basket on transfer paper of some sort, whatever it is you're supposed to use, and got to lift it up and put it on the background. And I had to make the background because I didn't have the right background. I didn't have enough fabric for the background. I had perfect fabric. It was Japanese sushi fabric, but I didn't have enough, and I waited to go to Road to California to see if they had more, and they didn't. The trouble with using your stash is you're using fabric that's years old, and you never can get it. So I made my own background fabric, which I think actually was better in the end. But yeah, this quilt just became itself, and I just followed its directions.
The quilt spoke to you. The quilt spoke to you.
Yeah, I mean, it told me what it needed, and I did it. So.
Well, Roberta, again, congratulations, and thank you so much for taking out the time. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, or other quilts, or what's down the line for you in terms of quilting.
I've been working with painting fabric with thickened dye, which I really like, which I think is the next evolution from this painted fabric, because you can get a lot more transparency and just fun patterns and things, and I'm really liking that. But it's whatever is in my closet. And I tend to make quilts of the Eastern Sierra. Usually it's abstract landscape to evoke a feeling of the land or the people, such as this quilt. So I continue in that series, and all the quilts are kind of different.
Yeah, they are.
So
Roberta, again, congratulations. The quilt again is Blue Basket. It won the equilter.com Master Award for Contemporary Artistry, sponsored by equilter.com. That was a $5,000 prize. And you can see this quilt along with all of the finalists and all of the winners at the Houston Quilt Festival in a couple of weeks. So Roberta, again, thank you for taking out the time.
thank you, Bob. It was nice to meet you in person finally.